I still haven't recorded a version of last week's yet. I'll hopefully get to that soon. We forgot to record last week, and it's kind of important as it's part of a series. And also, just wanted to take a minute, and we've got probably one of the longest distance drivers at the service, has us beat. Came down from Massachusetts. Rick is his name. Lane's brother is over here, so y'all make sure you get a chance to say hello and welcome him. And I feel like we should have a prize or something, but we don't. So, Elaine will give it to him later. So, today we are going to be looking at, and for some of us for the first time, we'll be discovering some things you've probably never heard of, never seen before, and for some of us, maybe this is old hat to you, or maybe you've heard little bits and pieces of the similarities, but we're going to be discovering revelation within the book of Joshua. And before we get into it, I guess I'm going to hand out some of our reading assignments for today, and if you have the app, the verses are all there, and it's just, there's no way we're going to get to all of these. I don't mean to be going down these endless rabbit trails of, making a big series out of everything, but my goal is we're going to go through a couple of points today of the similarities, and then I'll give you guys an option when we kind of get to the home stretch of today's service of whether or not you want me to continue, if you're finding it interesting enough that you want to go ahead and look at it again next week and dig in and try to finish up, or if you want me to, at that point, switch gears and kind of go into story mode and just extemporaneously explain the similarities, and then you can go back on your own time and search them out and study them for yourselves. There's like 24 chapters in the book of Joshua, 22 in Revelation. So I guess I was delusional in the first place that I could somehow do it justice in one, but we'll do our best. So the first reference is going to be from Joshua chapter 2. And Josh, you can follow me on this, make sure I'm giving out the right things. It's verse 1 through 21. Joshua chapter 2, verse 1 through 21. Who wants that one?
I'll do it.
You got it. What was that one after that, Josh?
Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, that one I'm just going to paraphrase that one, just for time's sake. What's the one after?
Revelation 11, 3 through 8.
Yeah, Revelation chapter 11, verses 3 through 8. Who wants that one?
I'll do it.
You got it. Next one is Hosea.
Hosea, yeah.
Hosea chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. Who wants that?
I'll do it.
You got it. And what was the next one?
Joshua 3:10.
I don't remember what that one is. Joshua 3:10.
I can read it.
All right, well, Joshua's got Joshua. And if we go deeper, we'll give out more after that. So, Ecclesiastes, I think it's like 1 through 10 or 1 through 11.
1 through 11.
Yeah, 1 through 11. You can read it on your own time. I will paraphrase this one just for time's sake. But Solomon explains, you're familiar, I'm sure, with the general gist of all of Ecclesiastes is, vanity, vanity, there's nothing new under the sun, it's all been done before, chasing after the wind, and everything being meaningless, and ultimately pointing to the one thing that does matter, and it's the Lord and the Messiah who has come, from that perspective at that time, the coming Messiah. But the point I want to draw out from these first 11 verses of Ecclesiastes is the fact that there is nothing new under the sun. That which has been before. This is not indicative of anything remotely to do with reincarnation. There is no such thing. It does not exist. There are some parts of Judaism that kind of buy into that lie, but Hebrews chapter 9, I believe it is very clear that it is appointed unto a man once to die, and then to judgment. So if you're only appointed death once and judgment once, coming back for a second try doesn't make any sense. What this is referring to is the cyclical nature of our world. The enemy only has so many tricks. He only has so many plans, schemes, and devices that he has up his sleeve, so to speak. And they work. Sadly, they work beautifully, all too well. So he doesn't have to invent anything new. And even aside from that, our fallen nature, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is unfortunately to do evil always. God laments over his people during their time in the wilderness. So when we see and we try to grasp and understand that, the Brit Chadashah, it's not a new covenant, it's literally renewed. The church at large looks at it as just something new. It's a new covenant. It's somehow does away with the old, and it just comes from a place of ignorance. And I don't mean that as a bad, derogatory word. It's just they just don't know. For one reason or another, they haven't studied. They haven't been taught. They haven't been intellectually curious enough to seek things deeper than a Jesus loves me, this I know, cotton candy Christianity kind of thing. But praise God, more and more people are waking up. And prophecy is being fulfilled, that prophesied in the end of days, that knowledge would be increasing, and certainly knowledge is increasing upon the earth in a general sense. Technology is just overwhelming. If you followed the news from Israel over the past week or so, and I've been posting some of the newscasts on our Facebook page, last night, I think I posted something from Amir Safarti from Behold Israel channel. The technology that they're using is stunning. They've taken out 6 of the top leaders of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and 3 of them were in apartment high-rises. One in particular, he pointed out, was on the 5th floor in a back room. And somehow, with 40 aircraft, they were simultaneously able to take out 3 terrorists and their families in 3 different parts of Gaza within about 30 seconds of each other. And the rocket somehow found its way into the apartment where he was, detonated, took him and his, whoever was there with him, took them out, and didn't destroy the building, didn't take out adjacent floors or apartments. That blows my mind. It's kind of Terminator scary. I don't know. It's bizarre. But that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about in the end that the knowledge will increase. Knowledge of what then if it's not this technology? It's knowledge of the Word. And you and I are testimony, or testament, living epistles, if you will, of this fact that people exist that are hungry, that want to know what's going on. And we realize that there is nothing new in the New Testament, in the New Covenant, whatever you want to call it. There's nothing new. I mean, there's different people, different places, different events, and different times, but it's all the same. It's all been done before. And again, it's not a reincarnation thing. It's just, it's all built in. And everything is prophetic of what is to come. So, as a real super quick point of reference. So, the first 5 books of Moses, first 5 books or the Torah itself, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, the first 5 books of your Bible, however you want to look at it, it's all about the journey. We've discussed this before. It's It's God creates the universe with the intention of creating a place where he could create a people that would love him and serve him out of free will and out of choice, not a bunch of automatons, and how, man fell. And then it's all about the journey of redemption, how God planned to and did provide a way of escape from the condemnation we were already under. Remember, Yeshua came and said, I didn't come into the world to condemn the world. It's condemned already. He came the first time as a lamb being led to the slaughter to pay the penalty for our sin, that we might eternally be with him if we choose. He made a way. He made it possible. But it was all about the journey. They never made it. They never made it to the promised land. They never made it to the end game, so to speak. Moses was brought up to the mountain, was allowed to look. He could see it, but he wasn't allowed to enter. And the wilderness generation, they, because of their sin, they was it everyone under 20 years of age died out and weren't allowed into the promised land. And it wasn't until Joshua led them into the promised land that they finally realized the promise that was made. Now, the bird's eye 30,000 foot view of this is really quite something, because Joshua in the Hebrew is Yehoshua, whose name originally was Hosea, or Hosea. As a matter of fact, we have another prophet, one of the prophets, we got a whole book named Hosea. But the Yah was added to his name, changing his name from, basically salvation to God's salvation, or salvation from God. And that's ultimately where Yehoshua was shortened to Yeshua, and that's, that's the name of our Messiah. That's the name he was given. So Joshua is a picture. He wasn't the Messiah, but he was a picture of the Messiah. So we end up in just food for thought, just something to think about. I'm not saying you gotta embrace this, but it's a pretty neat picture that Moses, in many ways, was a picture of God himself. Remember, God told Moses to go unto Pharaoh, and you will be a God unto him, or as a God, whatever the exact wording was. He was the mouthpiece of God. God is the law. He is the Torah. John chapter 1 says that he was the Word made flesh, right? And he gave himself to Moshe at the top of Mount Sinai. And Moses came down from that mountain as the lawgiver. And the people, for the most part, there were people that rejected him, and people that complained, and people that paid the price. But for the most part, the people followed Moses as he followed God. When Moses died, the book of Joshua, chapter 1, and you can go ahead and read it, later on. But it says, again, paraphrasing, that Moses, my servant, is dead. Now arise and lead my people into the promised land. It's a picture of what ended up happening when Yeshua came to the earth and took on flesh and died. And God, the Father, raised him from the dead on the third day. And this might be confusing, and I hope I say this correctly, as it's in my head. It makes perfect sense, and I hope it makes sense to you. But it wasn't his death on the cross his death on the cross certainly paid the price, paid the penalty for our salvation. But our salvation was not made complete until he rose from the dead and conquered death, hell, and the grave. And I hope I'm conveying that the way it makes sense in my head. Not in any way saying his death wasn't enough. It certainly was. But the whole thing is the whole thing. So it's when he rose from the dead, it completed everything. So the whole idea of Moses, my servant, is dead, now arise and lead my people into the promised land is something so amazing and so beautiful. And we're going to see how everything, in one way or another, lines up with the 7-year tribulation and end times events. And I think it's going to be pretty awesome. Who has, was it Jana that had Joshua 2, 1 through 21? Come on down.
Then Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men as spies secretly from Shittim, saying, Go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and came into the house of a harlot whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. It was told the king of Jericho, saying, Behold, men from the sons of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land. And the king of Jericho sent word to Rahab, saying, Bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. It came about when it was time to shut the gate at dark, that the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them in the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued them on the road to the Jordan to the fords. And as soon as those who were pursuing them had gone out, they shut the gate. Now before they lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the terror of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land have melted away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. When we heard it, our hearts melted, and no courage remained in any man any longer because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. Now therefore please swear to me by the Lord, since I have dealt kindly with you, that you also will deal kindly with my father's household, and give me a pledge of truth, and spare my father and my mother, and my brothers and my sisters, with all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. So the men said to her, Our life for yours, if you do not tell this business of ours. And it shall come about when the Lord gives us the land, that we will deal kindly and faithfully with you. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the city wall, so that she was living on the wall. She said to them, Go to the hill country, so that the pursuers will not happen upon you, and hide yourselves there for 3 days until the pursuers return. Then afterward you may go on your way. The men said to her, We shall be free from this oath to you, which you have made us swear, unless when we come into the land you tie this cord of scarlet thread in the window, through which you let us down, and gather to yourself into the house your father and your mother and your brothers and all your father's household. It shall come about that anyone who goes out of the doors of your house into the street, his blood shall be on his own head, and we shall be free. But anyone who is with you in the house, his blood shall be on our head, if a hand is laid on him. But if you tell this business of ours, then we shall be free from the oath which you have made us swear. She said, According to your words, so be it. So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window.
Thank you. And I'm going to go a little different order than I thought. Who has Hosea chapter 1, verses 1 through 3? Who had, did I give that one out?
No, I don't think you did.
I can read it.
Come on down, brother. Hosea chapter 1, verses 1 through 3.
Hosea. I understand.
I see.
Yes.
I-
Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay.
Hosea's unfaithful wife. The word of the Lord of Adonai that came to Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. When Adonai began to speak by Hosea, Adonai said to Hosea, "Go, take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from Adonai." So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son.
Okay. So, if you're not familiar with the story of Gomer and Hosea, make that part of your homework, part of your Shabbat. It's an amazing situation. So what do these two stories have in common, and how does it have anything to do with Revelation and the time of tribulation? In both of these stories, we have Hosea, the prophet, and then Hosea renamed Yehoshua, Joshua. Both rescuing, saving, in a sense, a harlot, a prostitute. God has always had a problem with his people, his words, not mine, whoring after the nations and going after idolatry and immorality of every sort. But we see here the heart of God isn't to destroy, it isn't to curse, it isn't to punish, it isn't to separate, it isn't to crush, it isn't to any other adjective you want to throw in there, but it's rather to save. He sent Joshua, or caused Joshua to send his two spies, if you will, his two chosen fellows to go on in and scope it out. And in the process, we're led to this woman of ill repute who had heard about the God of Israel and had heard of the wondrous, miraculous events associated with their time in Egypt and their departure. And she had put her faith and trust and hope in that God. And as a result, they offered her a way of salvation of sorts, a means by which her and her family would be saved from the destruction that was coming. Likewise, Gomer, being a prostitute, by many, or all accounts, that's a horrible thing, not to be desired. It's filthy, disgusting. It's a wasted life. But yet God sent his prophet after her to demonstrate his patience, to demonstrate his love, to demonstrate salvation and forgiveness. So we've got these two major examples of that, and other things that occurred in the Brit Hadashah, the New Covenant. And for time's sake, we won't go there, but you might want, if you're taking notes, go and read Revelation chapter 18. This is the chapter dealing with, again, God's language, not mine, the whore of Babylon, the prostitute, the spirit that led the world into abominable acts and practices that finally patience and mercy has run out, and God directly deals with this, cuts her off, destroys her, crushes her, and within an hour she falls, and all of the earth, all of the kings, all of the powerful, all of the merchants mourn. There's another interesting connection with these, with the Rahab account, which we know ultimately she ended up in the lineage of Messiah, if you read Matthew chapter 1. So it absolutely was not only a salvation, but it was a pathway, for lack of a better term, through which salvation would ultimately come to all of us. It's quite an amazing story, but there's something else there in that story that is reflective of what is to take place in Revelation. Who has the portion from, was it Revelation chapter 11?
Yes.
All right.
3.
What is it? 3 to 8?
3, right?
Yeah, come on down.
And I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands standing before the God of the earth. And if anyone wants to harm them, fire proceeds from their mouth and devours their enemies. And if anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this manner. These have power to shut heaven so that no rain falls in the days of their prophecy, and they have no power over waters to turn them to blood, and to strike the earth with all plagues, as often as they desire. When they finish their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them, overcome them, and kill them. And their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified.
Thank you. So, here the obvious connection is the 2 witnesses. You know, in the book of Joshua, they're called 2 spies, and on one hand they did go in to spy out the land, but they were also 2 witnesses. Because they testified and gave a way of salvation to really a small few. Likewise, at the midpoint of the tribulation, I believe, is when these 2 witnesses, who God says are not just 2 witnesses, they're my 2 witnesses. There's all kinds of speculation as to who they might be. Some say Moses, some say Elijah, some say all kinds of things. My personal opinion, and it's just an opinion, we'll find out when we get there. Again, it ties back into Hebrews 9, that it is appointed unto a man once to die, and there's 2 characters, 2 men that never died. Elijah was caught up in a whirlwind and taken up in chariots of fire, and therefore never tasted death. And we learn from the lineage of Adam that Enoch, who lived 365 years, and walked with God until he was not. And most theologians agree that, that he was somehow caught up, somehow translated before he sinned to be with God. And then these are the 2 witnesses that will come back during the end of days and will stand for 1,260 days outside of the rebuilt temple, testifying, witnessing that the one whom the world is turning to worship is not the Messiah. He's the false Messiah. that Yeshua is the true Mashiach. He is God. And they will testify to that, and a relative few will be saved. We know there's 144,000 that will be saved. I'm trying to think of where to go next. What time is it now?
10:36.
36. Okay, let me try to get a few more in. So, I'm trying to remember. Was it what was the 3:10, Josh?
Joshua 3:10, but I don't know this.
What is that about?
Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites.
Yeah. All right, come on up and do that. So this is Joshua chapter 3, verse 10.
This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites.
Okay. So, this, by the way, let me give you another kind of synopsis of the story. So in both stories, the hero, in Joshua, it's Joshua, in Revelation, it's Yeshua. In both cases, they're coming back into the land, or in Joshua's case, coming into the land for the first time, to kick out, destroy, and put an end to those who are there who do not belong there. And to take back that which belongs to the Lord. I think it's Revelation chapter 5 or 6. I want to say it's chapter 6, where we get into the seals. And the scroll, and none was found worthy to open it. And then Yeshua came and took the scroll from the hand of God, which is quite a picture of authority, right? Can't imagine going up and taking anything from God unless he's, here, come and take this. But here Yeshua just walks up and takes it. That's pretty amazing. And most theologians agree and believe, and I am also persuaded that what this is the title deed to earth that was handed over when Adam and Eve first sinned. They gave up the dominion over the earth that God had given them. So the Hasatan, Satan, the devil, he usurped God's will and his authority and took that which didn't belong to him. And in Revelation, Yeshua's coming back to take back what belongs to him. And he's going to drive out that which doesn't belong here. Now, Joshua says in 3:10 that is 7 nations. If you count up each of those nations that will be driven out, there's 7. But there's a problem. Who wants to turn real quick? What is the Genesis 15 reference, Josh?
18 to 21.
18 to 21. I need someone to come up real quick and read it. Genesis chapter 15, verses 18 through 21. And as it's being read, I want you guys to count.
On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, to your descendants I give this land from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephates, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites.
That's 10, right? Count them up. Make sure my math is right.
I got 9.
10.
But 10? Well, simple math is not our strength, is it?
There's 10 nations. 10 nations that are said to be in the land. Joshua says we're going to kick out 7. And there's one more reference I need someone to read from Daniel chapter 7.
7 and 8.
Verses 7 and 8.
I'll do it.
Come on down. Daniel chapter 7, verses 7 and 8.
After that, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me was a fourth beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully.
All right. So God makes a promise to Abraham to give him a land. But there are 10 nations already inhabiting it that are already there, that are usurping, that have no business being there. And Daniel, with his vision of the end, sees 10 horns representing the 10 nations. And there's much speculation about who are these nations. It's the European Union, and there's all kinds of evidence that suggests that that's certainly the case, although I think there's more than 10 nations. I want to say it's 13 nations that are part of the EU right now. But at some point, there's going to be 10 nations that are in one way or another. And again, this doesn't necessarily mean sovereign nations like countries like we think of today. It absolutely can be. But nations refer to peoples. So there's 10 peoples, which again, may very well be 10 nations. It probably is. 10 nations that are represented somehow in their roots and their history is going to be traced back to these 10 that we read in Genesis 15. But the little horn, representative of the false Messiah, the Antichrist, whatever you want to call him, is going to rise up and apparently make war somehow, for some reason, with 3 of those nations. So he's already taken care of 30% of the problem. It's kind of interesting. God gets the enemy to do the Lord's work sometimes. And who knows, maybe those 3 nations aren't really down with the plan. Maybe their hearts have been softened towards Israel. I don't know what the reason is, but for some reason, and it's gotta be something, that he's going to go after them and destroy them, thereby leaving 7. That the Lord will come and put an end to himself. So it's pretty interesting, to say the least. So, do we want to continue the remainder of this service going into some of these details, or shall I switch into quote-unquote story mode and in extemporaneous fashion go through and mention the similarities best I can recall them, and giving you stimulating your appetite to go and study for yourself? Or do you want to maybe wrap it up and then continue next week with more of the verse by verse teachings?
Story mode.
What's that?
Story mode.
We got 1 vote for story mode. All in favor?
Right, story mode.
Woo! Story mode. All those that want to continue and go deep? Uh-oh. Sounds like I only had 2 continues.
Can we not do both?
I could do continue.
How about this? What if I go,
Half and half?
well, a more talented and gifted orator would probably be able to handle that. But what if we do story mode, and then I record a video, since I need more content for the YouTube channel, where we get more of the detail and have that resource for you. And then we can, huh? You like that?
Yes.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. So one important thing, and it's actually listed on the app, There's a verse, I think in Joshua chapter 5, where Joshua comes in and he encounters a man with a sword. And you guys are familiar. Are you for us or are you for our enemies? Joshua says. And essentially he says neither. I'm the captain of the Lord's hosts. Theologians use a fancy term called a Christophany, where they say it was a pre-incarnate Yeshua. And some argue it was an angel of the Lord, and that is absolutely not true, and we know it from the plain text because it says, not just in the description, but actually says that Joshua fell down and worshiped. You don't worship angels. It's not allowed. Matter of fact, when men are so inclined to fall prostrate before an appearance of an angel, anywhere it happens, the angel always says, "Get up. I am a servant of the Lord like you. Worship only him." So this is Yeshua, one way or another. And it's Yeshua that gives the instructions on how to advance on Jericho. So it's his battle plan back in Joshua. It's his battle plan in Revelation. An interesting thing, before they go into battle, Joshua orders his men to be circumcised again. We're told in the Brit Hadashah that circumcision is a sign and a seal, right? It's a seal and a sign of what? Of the covenant that God has made with his people. And in Revelation, either 5 or 6, I think it's chapter 6 again, with the, it's in Revelation, when we get to the trumpets, yeah, so it's later than 6. When we get to the trumpets, an angel tells some of the other angels to hold back, hold up. Don't sound the trumpet yet. Why? Don't do it until we have sealed the 144,000 for the Lord. So prior to the battle, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel are sealed. It's a sign of the covenant. These are, the word calls them virgins, and I don't believe it's just, young men or even older men that have never had carnal relations with a woman. It's in the context, they're virgins spiritually. They have not lain with the whore of Babylon. They have not participated in that. They have not bowed to idolatry or immorality. So we've got God's people being sealed before battle in Jericho, and they're being sealed before the final battle. Joshua gives an order to march around Jericho, led by the Ark of the Covenant and the Levites, two things that never were supposed to go into battle. You don't send the Ark into battle. You don't send the Levites. The Levites were exempt from military service. But yet, Yeshua tells Joshua, this is the plan. My word shall go forth. In essence, is what he's saying. And for 6 days, you will march around the city, silent. No sounding of the shofar, no shouting. They were mocked and ridiculed. And then on the 7th day, the Shabbat. They're supposed to be going on long walks. 7 times they circled the city, and on the 7th time, they shouted. They blew the shofar, and the kingdom fell. In Revelation, 7 is represented. Of course, we don't hear in Revelation about the 7-year tribulation. That's prophesied in Daniel. That's where the 7-year tribulation comes from. But it lines up perfectly with what Revelation does teach us. And we're told before the 7th trumpet, and somebody, I don't know who, made a terrible joke last time about silence in heaven.
Because it's funny.
I'm just kidding. Just having fun with Jim at his expense. But yeah, so all of heaven, we're told, is silent for about a period of a half an hour before the 7th trumpet sounds. So it's interesting, before the trumpet sounds, there is silence also in Revelation. And then when that trumpet sounds, the kings and kingdoms of this earth fall before the Lord. Interesting.
Very good.
Very interesting. We're told there's a scene where the kings and leaders of Jericho, after the fact, are fleeing from Joshua. And a hailstorm comes, and they flee to the mountains and hide themselves in a cave. We're shown in Revelation the final seal. We talked about it last week, is a plague of hail. The stones weighing a talent each. Depending on who you listen to, it can be as light as 60 pounds or as heavy as 135 pounds. Imagine that. Forget all the high ones, even 60, but I can't imagine 60-pound stones being hurled from heaven, and we discussed why. Leviticus 24, 10 through 18, I believe it was. The penalty for blasphemy is stoning. And we're told all throughout Revelation, the people repented not and blasphemed God. And we're told in Revelation that the kings, the wealthy, the elites, the powerful, the leaders, will all seek refuge where? In the rocks and in the caves, and will cry for the mountains to fall upon them, to hide them from the face of the Lord, for his wrath has come. It's also interesting, there's a people, you will discover, that deceived Joshua. Gibeonites, escaping me exactly what they're called, but they deceive us, saying, hey, we came from a far way off, and and basically deceived them. And after what happened at Jericho, they say to Joshua and acquiesce that yes, your God is God. And what does Joshua do? Joshua says, I will not destroy you. But what? But you shall be servants and, what's that word? Hewers of wood. I can't imagine, but there will be some who are saved, aside from the 144,000 that are marked and sealed. There will be some who will not bow, that will be saved, and God will not destroy them. And they will be on this earth for the 1,000-year millennial reign, but they're not quite going to have the same status as you and I. You see, because God has prepared a place for those who have placed their faith and trust in him and serve him and love him and follow his commands and keep his Sabbaths and keep his commands. Deuteronomy 8:2. He's brought us out of the wilderness, brought us out of Egypt. Mitzrayim, the Hebrew word for Egypt, means prison, bondage, a narrow place, a closed-in space. He's brought us out of that. He's delivered us from sin, is the metaphor of the actual events that happen. And he's brought us through the wilderness, which is our lives. And he says, not that the devil has done terrible things, testing us and proving us. He says, I have tested you and proved you to see whether it was in your heart to keep my commandments. No expectation you can do it, but is it in your heart? And if it is, and you've placed your faith and trust in him, and you're doing something, you're saved unto good works. There's nothing you can do, there's nothing I can do to make yourself worthy of salvation. Just give it up. If you're trying to earn your way, forget it. Never been done before. Never will. The idea is because of the free gift that we have received, we are grateful. We love him. Because Yeshua himself said that we ought to fear not him who can kill the body and then do no more, Matthew chapter 28, but fear him who can kill the body and cast it into eternal hellfire. Deuteronomy 10:13 says, and I shall paraphrase, what does the Lord require of you, O Israel? We're all Israel. We're grafted into the vine. If you believe in Yeshua, you believe in Jesus, you placed your faith and trust in him, you're adopted Jew, whether you know it or not. What does the Lord require of you? But to fear the Lord. And to love him. And to serve him. And to keep or to guard his commands. You see, people have a problem with the whole fearing God thing. And there's layers to the onion. God tells us in Proverbs 8:13 what the fear of the Lord is, to hate the evil way, the perverse mouth, and etc., the things that I hate. In other words, hate evil. Love what is good. That's the fear of the Lord. But we're also supposed to, Jesus said also, there's that layer of he loves you. But he is not just a God of mercy and grace, although praise God, and that is part of his character, a very important part. But he's also a God of justice. And he can't be a God of justice if he doesn't punish on repentant sin. So we all need to be in fear of him. Why? Because it will drive us to try to study his word and search it out. What do you want from me? What do I have to do? So with fear and trembling, we study and we work it out. We figure it out. That it's not just a bunch of do's and don'ts, rules from a cosmic master that takes joy in us teeny tiny weak creatures cowering in his presence. He takes no pleasure in that. But we begin to understand in all of those do's and don'ts is his love. They're all designed to protect us, to keep us safe, to keep us healthy, to keep us living in harmony with him, with our neighbors, with our government, to bless us, not to curse us. And when we figure that out, we now truly can understand his love and begin to love him. As we love him, the outgrowth from that is we will serve him, not because we have to. I'm not here because I have to be. I'm not an automaton. I'm not a robot. I can pursue life the way I want. can do what I want. He's not going to stop me if I walk away from him and throw up my hands and say I'm going to pursue other things. He'll let me do it. But it's not in my heart to do it. Because I love him and I know how much he loves me. It is my reasonable service to be a living sacrifice, Romans chapter 12 says. And it is the greatest joy to be able to search out the scriptures and to learn things for myself, for my family, and the privilege and the honor to be able to share it with you. And the lesson is today, perhaps above all else, is that there is no way that more than 40 authors over whatever the period of time was, 1,500, 2,000 years, whatever it was, on three different continents, somehow conspired to write interesting stories to control and manipulate people for their own power, for their own gain. There's no way. The more you educate yourself, the more you search out the scriptures, and the more you see that chiastic flow, the DNA of the word and how it runs through every chapter, every verse, from Genesis through the end of Revelation. God's fingerprints, his DNA are all over the word. It is linked. It's connected. If it seems irrelevant or seems boring or seems, genealogy, boy. It's because you don't get it. It's because you haven't dug in to search it out. God says it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings to search a matter out. We want to be in Revelation saints that are saved and will rule and reign with him. Our place is not wherever it is you live now. Ultimately, I got news for you. If you're saved and you stay the course and you faint not, and you overcome and you endure to the end, your residence is going to be in the New Jerusalem. 1,500 miles high, 1,500 miles wide and deep, a massive city floating over the old Jerusalem. That is our residence, and we will rule and reign with Messiah over what? Those Gibeonites that paid him lip service, that somehow, even though they were selfish and did their own thing and didn't really live for him and were left behind, that somehow mustered the strength to survive and refuse the mark of the beast and refuse to throw in with him. They have suffered greatly. They are those whom the tree of life that lines the great street in Jerusalem, that is for the healing of the nations. We don't need healing. We've got our new bodies. They will still be in the flesh, and they will live 1,000 years beyond their age at the time of the onset of the 7 years. They will need healing. I can't imagine. I'm 53 and I've got aches and pains. I can't imagine being 1,000 years old. Oy vey. Anybody with me? But praise God, he's provided a way for their healing. There's so much more. There is no way. even with Rabbi Jeff's story time, that we're going to get to all of it. I pray you've seen enough, both from story time and from reading the word and connecting the dots, that you are inspired to go deeper on your own. Please don't ever just rely on me to spoon feed you, and that be all you get. Joshua chapter 1, be strong and courageous. That phrase in one way or another is repeated in that chapter, not once, not twice, 4 times. Be strong and be courageous. Do not be dismayed. Be only strong. Be only courageous. We are not appointed unto wrath. We will not be here for the 7 years, but I got news for you. Between here and when the 7 years start, it ain't gonna be pretty. It's scary already. Things are gonna get worse. Do not let your hearts be troubled, for Yeshua has overcome the world. He is on the throne. He is not losing control. He's allowing things to happen. You know, I'm not, God is not Italian, but I'm just saying it's an Italian thing. It's a setup. But not for you and me. It's for the enemy. Every head bowed, every eye closed. Avinu Malkeinu, our